My name is Emily Carter. I'm 36 years old, and I work as an elementary school counselor in Brookhaven, Ohio, which means I spend most of my days teaching children that their worth isn't determined by what somebody else gives them. Ironic, considering I hadn't learned that lesson myself. At my sister Lauren's birthday dinner last October, she handed her 2 children brand new tablets. Not cheap ones. The kind with sleek cases, expensive headphones, and price tags that made my 9-year-old daughter Mia's eyes widen. "Those are the newest ones," Lauren's son whispered. Lauren smiled proudly. $900 each, she said. Then she reached into a shopping bag and pulled out a thin little coloring book. She handed it to Mia. "Here, sweetheart. I thought you'd like this." Mia looked at the coloring book. Then she looked at her cousins. Then back at me. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She just smiled and whispered, "Thank you, Aunt Lauren." Something inside me tightened. Because I knew that smile. I'd seen it hundreds of times at school. It was the smile children use when they're trying very hard to convince everyone, including themselves, that something doesn't hurt. I looked at Lauren. She was already talking about the tablets again. I didn't argue. I didn't embarrass Mia. I simply picked up my coffee and said 4 words. "That's okay." I noticed. Lauren's smile disappeared for half a second. Then she laughed. "Emily, don't make this weird." I smiled back. "I won't." I thought that was the end of it. I thought the worst thing my sister had done that night was make my daughter feel like the poor cousin. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, my phone rang at 10:17 on a Tuesday morning. It was Principal Harris from Mia's school. His voice was unusually careful. "Emily, can you come to my office when you have a moment?" I was halfway through a counseling session. "Is Mia okay?" A pause. "Yes, she's fine. This isn't about anything she did." That sentence made my stomach drop. "What is it about?" Another pause. "There's an application here with your daughter's name on it. I think you need to see it in person." I left work 20 minutes later. When I walked into the principal's office, there was a thick manila folder sitting on his desk. And beside it was a woman I recognized immediately. Lauren. My sister wasn't smiling anymore. Principal Harris gestured toward the chair. "Please sit down, Emily." I looked at Lauren. "What is this?" She folded her arms. "It's not what you think." I almost laughed. Because people only say, "It's not what you think," when they already know exactly what you're thinking. Principal Harris opened the folder. The first page was a scholarship application. The student's name was Mia Carter. I recognized the school. Brookhaven Preparatory Academy. One of the most expensive private schools in our county. I looked at the household information, and my eyebrows pulled together. The income listed for Mia's household wasn't mine. The address was mine. The child's name was mine. But almost everything else was wrong. Then I saw the emergency contact. My hand stopped moving. Lauren Carter. I looked up slowly. Why is my sister listed as Mia's emergency contact? Lauren sighed. Because somebody had to help. Help with what? Principal Harris cleared his throat. The application indicates that Mia is being considered for a special scholarship through a family education trust. My heart started beating harder. What family education trust? Lauren looked at me. And for the first time that morning, she looked afraid. Principal Harris pushed another document toward me. That's actually what we were hoping you could clarify. I read the heading. Carter Family Education Fund. I stared at it. I'd never heard of it. Not once. "Emily," Lauren said quietly, "Mom and Dad created it years ago." I turned toward her. "For Mia." She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I picked up the next page. There was a balance listed. $18,460.27. My mouth went dry. Whose money is this? Lauren finally spoke. Family money. I looked at her. No. Whose? She shifted in her chair. Emily, you don't understand how these things work. I actually smiled. That sentence was almost funny coming from my sister. Because I had spent 6 years helping children understand things adults refuse to explain. I looked back at the document. There was a signature near the bottom. My signature. Or something that looked remarkably like it. My fingers went cold. I never signed this. Lauren immediately said, You don't remember? No. You signed something years ago. No. She leaned forward. Emily, you were overwhelmed after Mia was born. Mom handled the paperwork. I looked at Principal Harris. Can I have a copy of everything in this folder? He hesitated. Of course. I gathered the papers carefully. Then I noticed something else. The application wasn't for a one-time scholarship. It was requesting 4 years of tuition assistance. For years. And the requested amount was over $72,000. I looked at my sister. Why are you applying for $72,000 for my daughter? Lauren's face changed. Just slightly. But I saw it. I'd spent 12 years reading children's expressions. Fear, guilt, shame, anger. And the expression Lauren was wearing wasn't any of those. It was calculation. She glanced at Principal Harris, then back at me. Because Mia deserves opportunities. I nodded slowly. She does. Lauren seemed relieved. Until I continued. So why didn't you tell me? Silence. Principal Harris looked down at the papers. Lauren crossed her arms tighter. Because you would have made it complicated. There it was. Not an apology. Not an explanation. A warning. I stood. Give me the copies. Principal Harris handed them over. I put them into my bag. Then I looked at Lauren. I'm going home. She stood too. Emily, wait. I stopped at the door. She lowered her voice. Don't do anything dramatic. I turned around. And I remembered the birthday dinner. The coloring book. The $900 tablets. Mia's little smile. I looked at my sister and said, I'm not doing anything dramatic. Then I walked out. I'm checking the math. That evening, Mia sat at the kitchen table coloring the same book Lauren had given her. She had carefully colored a purple horse outside the lines. She looked up. Mom? Yeah? Can I ask you something? I put down my laptop. Of course. Why does Aunt Lauren buy Ava and Ethan expensive stuff, but give me little stuff? There it was. The question I'd been trying to protect her from. I moved to the chair beside her. Did somebody say something to you? She shook her head. No. Then why are you asking? She shrugged. Because I'm not stupid. That broke my heart more than tears would have. I reached for her hand. You are not less important because somebody gives you something different. She looked at me. Then why does she? I didn't have an answer yet. So I told her the only honest thing I could. Sometimes adults make choices that have nothing to do with how valuable you are. Mia looked down at the coloring book. Okay. Then she went back to coloring. But I didn't. I waited until she went upstairs. Then I opened my laptop. I pulled out every document I'd received from the school. And I started with the signature. I compared it to the signature on my mortgage. My driver's license records. My bank documents. My daughter's medical forms. It looked like mine. Close enough to fool somebody who wanted to believe it was mine. But there was one problem. The date. The application had been signed 3 years earlier. 3 years ago, I was working 2 jobs. Mia was 6. And I remembered that week. Because I'd been sitting beside my father's hospital bed. He'd had pneumonia. My mother had called me every night asking me to come to the hospital. And Lauren had told me she was too overwhelmed with the kids. I remembered being there. I remembered signing hospital forms. I remembered my mother's coffee. I remembered my father's oxygen machine. But I did not remember signing anything about a family education fund. I opened another document. The fund's original creation date was listed as 6 months before Mia was born. That made sense. What didn't make sense was the account activity. I started reading. And then I saw something that made me sit back. The money wasn't untouched. It had been used. Not for Mia. Not for her school. Not for her medical expenses. There were withdrawals. Small ones at first. Then larger. $1,200. $2,800. $4,600. And then one transaction that made my hand stop above the trackpad. $9,000. Educational expenses. I stared at the date. Then I opened another page. The recipient wasn't a school. It wasn't a hospital. It wasn't anything related to Mia. It was a private academy. The same academy where Lauren's 2 children attended. I whispered, No. I kept scrolling. There were more. Tuition. Registration. Technology fees. Activity fees. Summer program. And suddenly those $900 tablets from 2 weeks earlier didn't look like gifts anymore. They looked like receipts. I grabbed my phone. I almost called my mother. Then I stopped. Because if Lauren had been using money from an account connected to my daughter, I needed to know who had authorized it. And more importantly, why my name was on the paperwork. I opened the final page. At the bottom was a line that said, Authorized Family Representative, Emily Carter. Underneath it was my signature. But next to the signature was a handwritten note. 3 words. Written in my mother's handwriting. She'll understand later. I stared at those words for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. Please don't turn this into a family war. I looked at the message. Then at the coloring book. Then at the documents. And for the first time that night, I smiled. Not because I was happy. Because I finally understood something. My sister hadn't given my daughter a $5 gift because she couldn't afford something better. She'd given Mia a $5 gift while spending thousands of dollars from a fund created for Mia's future. And somebody in my family had been keeping the receipts. I typed one response to Lauren. I'm not starting a war. I hit send. Then I added the folder to my bag. I'm finding out who started the accounting. And the next morning, I made an appointment with the bank. I had no idea that appointment would uncover the one thing my family had spent 9 years making sure I never saw. The bank appointment was scheduled for 9:30 the next morning. I arrived at 9:17. I had the folder from Principal Harris tucked under my arm, along with my mortgage paperwork, my daughter's birth certificate, and every document I could find that had my signature on it. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for a fact. There is a difference. The woman assigned to my case was named Rachel Monroe. She was probably in her early 50s, wore rectangular glasses, and had the kind of expression that made you feel she had already read the paperwork before you sat down. I handed her the folder. I need to understand something. She opened it. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Finally, she looked at me. Emily, do you know who opened this account? No. Do you know who is signing authority? I swallowed. My parents. Rachel nodded. And you? I stared at her. What? She turned the computer toward me. There were 3 authorized representatives listed on the Family Education Fund. My father, my mother, and me. I shook my head. I never agreed to that. Rachel didn't argue. Instead, she clicked into the account history. This fund was established 9 years ago. Your parents deposited the initial amount. Over time, additional contributions were made. By whom? She scrolled. Your parents. Some relatives. And occasionally you. I frowned. I never deposited money into this. Rachel stopped. That's interesting. She opened another screen. There were deposits from an account ending in 4812. I recognized the last 4 digits. My checking account. I stared at the screen. No. Rachel looked at me. Is that your account? Yes. Then you did make contributions. I shook my head harder. I've never heard of this fund. Rachel pulled up the transaction history. The first deposit was $250. Then $100. Then $150. Then another $250. Over 9 years, there were dozens of transfers. Small amounts. Almost invisible. Until Rachel showed me the total. $7,840. My money. My daughter's money. And I had never knowingly put $1 into that account. I felt my hands become cold. Can you tell me where those transfers were initiated? Rachel looked at the screen. Some were online. From my phone? No. A desktop device. Which one? She clicked again. IP records aren't available this far back on all transactions, but several originated from the same location. I already knew what she was going to say. Where? Rachel read the address. My parents' house. I leaned back. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my throat since the school office. Can my mother move money from my checking account? Rachel's expression changed. Not directly. Then how? She opened another document. And suddenly the puzzle got uglier. Years ago, when Mia was born, my mother had helped me set up automatic transfers for daycare expenses. I remembered that. I had been exhausted. I had just returned to work. My mother had said, "Let me help you organize everything." I'd given her temporary access to my banking portal. Temporary. Or at least that's what I'd believed. Rachel pointed to the authorization. Your mother was listed as an approved financial manager for 18 months. 18 months. Yes. But that was 9 years ago. Rachel nodded. That's the strange part. She opened another screen. The authorization was never fully removed. My mouth went dry. I stared at her. So she could see my account? Potentially. And move money? Depending on the permissions. I closed my eyes. 9 years. 9 years of trusting the person who had been quietly taking money from my account. I thought about all the times my mother had called me irresponsible. All the times she'd told me I needed to save more. All the times she'd asked why I didn't have enough money for vacations. I had always assumed she was criticizing me. Now I wondered if she had been monitoring me. Rachel continued. There's something else. I opened my eyes. She pulled up the education fund's withdrawal history. Most withdrawals were made by your sister. I stared at the screen. Lauren. Again. 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 And then I saw the description beside the largest withdrawals. Brookhaven Preparatory Academy. Lauren's Children's School. I felt something inside me settle. Not explode. Not shatter. Settle. The way dust settles after somebody finally stops moving around the room. How much? Rachel looked at me. How much did my sister take? She calculated. Then she turned the monitor toward me. $31,640. I read it twice. Then a third time. My sister had spent more than $31,000 from a fund supposedly created for my daughter. And I had been the one putting money into it. I looked at Rachel. Can I freeze it? Yes. Can anyone else withdraw? Not once we place a restriction. Do it. She paused. Emily, if you're disputing unauthorized transfers, you'll need documentation. Give me the documentation. She nodded. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. There's one more issue. I almost laughed. Of course there was. What? Rachel opened another file. The account was modified 6 months ago. By whom? She looked directly at me. Your sister. My heart skipped. How? She was added as an authorized family representative. I stared at the screen. I never approved that. Rachel nodded. That may be why you're here. She printed the document. I looked at the signature. My signature. Again. But this time I knew immediately that it wasn't mine. The letters were too careful. Too perfect. My signature has a slight upward curve at the end. This one didn't. I pointed to it. This is forged. Rachel didn't react. Then we'll need to investigate that. I folded the document. Please freeze the account. We will. And I want every document connected to my name. You'll receive copies. I stood. Then Rachel asked, Are you planning to report this? I looked at her. I don't know yet. She nodded. Take your time. I almost smiled. Nobody in my family had ever said those words to me. Take your time. Usually it was. You need to help. You need to understand. You need to contribute. You need to think about the family. I walked out of the bank with a folder full of evidence. But I still didn't call the police. Not yet. I drove to my parents' house instead. My mother opened the door. She looked at me, then at the folder. And something happened to her face. It lasted less than a second. But I saw it. Recognition. Not confusion. Recognition. She knew. I stepped inside. Where's Dad? In the den. Good. She shut the door. What is this about? I placed the folder on the kitchen table. The education fund. Her eyes moved to the folder. Then back to me. Emily. Don't. My voice wasn't loud. But it stopped her. I opened the folder. Why is my checking account connected to the fund? My mother sat down. Because we were helping you save. I didn't know you were taking money from my checking account. Her expression hardened. We weren't taking it. We were moving it. Without telling me, you would have spent it. I stared at her. That sentence landed harder than anything else. You thought I'd spend my daughter's money? My mother sighed. That's not what I said. It is exactly what you said. She folded her hands. Emily, you have always been emotional about money. I almost smiled. I'm a single mother. You've always been bad at planning. I own my home. She went quiet. That was new. My house wasn't impressive. 3 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. Small backyard. But it was mine. I'd paid every mortgage payment myself. My mother looked down. That's not the point. No. I pushed the next document toward her. This is the point. She saw the $31,640 total. Her face changed. Lauren needed help. I felt my jaw tighten. From Mia's fund? Family money. I stared at her. Why does family money always seem to become Lauren's money? My mother stood. Don't start comparing yourself to your sister. I didn't. You always do this. Do what? Turn everything into a competition. I actually laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. Mom, Lauren's children got $900 tablets 2 weeks ago. My mother blinked. So, Mia got a coloring book. She likes coloring. And Lauren's children got private school tuition from a fund created for Mia. My mother's face went completely still. There it was. The confirmation I needed. I didn't need her to confess. Her silence did it for her. Mom. She looked away. Your sister needed it. Why? Because she has 2 children. And I have 1. You've always been able to manage. I stared at her. Then I said, that's what you call it? What? Me surviving. She didn't answer. I picked up the forged authorization. Who signed this? My mother glanced at it. Don't be ridiculous. Who signed it? You're making accusations without understanding the paperwork. I'm looking at my signature. Then perhaps you forgot. I stared at her. And for the first time, I understood something. My mother wasn't scared because she'd been caught. She was angry because I had started asking questions. I closed the folder. Where's Dad? Emily. Where is he? In the garage. I walked out. My father was standing at his workbench, sorting old tools. He looked up. Hey, sweetheart. I placed the folder on the bench. He saw the papers. His face changed. What's that? I opened the account statement. Did you know Lauren took $31,640 from Mia's education fund? He stopped moving. It's not like that. I stared at him. You knew. He rubbed his forehead. Your mother handled the finances. That's not an answer. He sighed. Emily, your sister was struggling. She bought $900 tablets. He looked away. I continued. She paid for private school. Lauren has 2 children. So do other families. He didn't answer. I picked up the forged signature. Did Mom sign this? My father stared at it. Then he looked at me. And I knew. He knew. Maybe he hadn't signed it. Maybe he hadn't initiated it. But he knew. I felt something inside me go quiet. Dad. He finally said. Your mother believed the money was being used for the family. The fund was created for Mia. I know. Then why didn't you tell me? He sat down. And suddenly he looked older. Much older. Because every time somebody needed something, your mother said she'd handle it. And you let her. He looked at me. I didn't want another fight. I nodded slowly. There it was. The family philosophy in 1 sentence. Nobody wanted a fight, so everyone let me pay for the peace. I picked up the folder. I'm freezing the account. My father stood. Emily, don't do anything you'll regret. I looked at him. I already regret something. What? Trusting people who made me feel guilty for protecting my own child. I walked away. But when I reached the garage door, my father said, Your mother didn't start this. I stopped. I turned around. What? He looked down. Nothing. No. You just said something. He rubbed his hands together. Forget it. I stepped toward him. Dad, what did Mom not start? He looked at me for several seconds. Then he said, Ask her about the blue notebook. My heart stopped. What blue notebook? But he had already turned away. I went home with 1 sentence repeating in my head. The blue notebook. That night, after Mia went to bed, I searched every cabinet in my house. Nothing. Then I called my Aunt Rachel. Not my bank manager. My mother's older sister. The one person in our family who had always seemed uncomfortable whenever money came up. She answered on the fourth ring. Emily? Aunt Rachel, can I ask you something? Her voice changed. Sure. Do you know anything about a blue notebook? Silence. Not normal silence. The kind of silence where somebody is deciding whether telling you the truth will destroy something. Finally, she whispered. Where did you hear that? I sat down. Dad. Another pause. Then she said, Oh, honey. My stomach tightened. What? Your mother told you the family story, didn't she? What family story? The one about what you girls owed. I stared at the wall. What did we owe? Aunt Rachel sighed. Your mother has been keeping accounts since she was a teenager. I didn't understand. Accounts of what? Everything. My pulse increased. Everything what? What people gave her. What she gave them. What they owed. I remembered the coloring book. The tablets. The education fund. The $31,640. And suddenly I wasn't sure I wanted to know what the blue notebook contained. Aunt Rachel spoke again. Emily, there's something else. What? I don't think your mother ever intended that education fund to belong entirely to Mia. My hand tightened around the phone. What does that mean? She called it a family opportunity account. Why? Because she believed children should repay what their families invested in them. I stared into the dark kitchen. Repay? Yes. How? Aunt Rachel didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered. Ask your mother what happened to the money your grandmother saved for her. I sat completely still. What money? The money your grandmother put aside for your mother when she was young. Where did it go? Aunt Rachel's voice dropped. That's the part your mother never talks about. I looked toward the stairs. Mia was asleep upstairs. My daughter had spent her entire life believing gifts were gifts. I was beginning to realize that in my family, nothing had ever been free. Not help. Not birthdays. Not tuition. Not even love. I thanked Aunt Rachel and ended the call. Then I opened my laptop. I searched for my mother's old address. Nothing. I searched family records. Nothing. Finally, I remembered something. My mother kept old documents in a storage cabinet at my grandparents' former house. The house had been sold years ago. But before it was sold, my mother had moved several boxes into the basement of our family home. I knew exactly where they were. The next morning, I called my mother. Mom, I need to come by. Her voice was cold. Why? I need to find something. What? The blue notebook. Silence. This time, she didn't pretend not to know. Then she said, You've been talking to Rachel. I froze. How do you know that? Because nobody else would tell you about it. My mother took a breath. Emily, leave the past alone. I looked at the school folder on my kitchen table. The past is paying my daughter's tuition. That's not fair. I laughed quietly. Fair? She didn't answer. I said, I'll be there at 6. You don't need to come. I do. Emily, I'll see you at 6. I hung up. At 5:52, I pulled into my parents' driveway. My mother was waiting at the door. And she was holding something. A small blue notebook. She didn't say hello. She simply looked at me and said, If you open this, Emily, you won't be able to pretend we're the same family afterward. I looked at the notebook, then at my mother, and I realized something terrifying. She wasn't threatening me. She was warning me. My mother was still holding the blue notebook. I didn't move. Neither did she. For a moment, we stood on opposite sides of the doorway like strangers who happened to recognize each other's faces. Then she stepped aside. Come in. I walked into the house. She shut the door behind me. My father wasn't there. That bothered me immediately. Where's Dad? He went to the hardware store. I looked at the notebook. You sent him away? Her jaw tightened. Don't make everything a conspiracy, Emily. I didn't say conspiracy. You didn't have to. She walked toward the kitchen. I followed. The same kitchen where I'd spent countless holidays. The same table where my mother had taught me how to fold napkins. The same refrigerator covered with family photographs. Except now I noticed something I'd never noticed before. Every picture seemed to have a calculation attached to it. Lauren's wedding. Lauren's children. Lauren's graduation. My own wedding photo was missing. I stopped. Where's my wedding picture? My mother looked over her shoulder. What? The framed picture from my wedding. She shrugged. It's in storage. Why? Because the frame broke. I stared at her. It was a ridiculous answer. But I didn't argue. Not yet. My mother put the blue notebook on the table. Sit. I sat. She remained standing. You want to know what this is? Yes. You're going to judge me. Maybe. She looked hurt. That almost made me laugh. After everything I discovered, she was worried about being judged. She opened the notebook. The first page was covered in handwriting. Dates. Names. Amounts. My mother's handwriting. Perfectly straight. Perfectly organized. At the top of the page was one word. Contributions. I leaned closer. The first name was my grandmother. Then my grandfather. Then my Aunt Rachel. Then my father. Then my mother. It wasn't a diary. It wasn't a journal. It was a record. Every gift. Every loan. Every favor. Every expense. Everything had a dollar amount beside it. My mother watched my face. Everyone keeps records. No. I turned another page. Normal people don't keep records of birthday gifts. She said nothing. I kept reading. My father's first car. $4,200. My mother's wedding dress. $760. Lauren's first apartment. $12,500. My nursing school tuition. $18,400. I stopped. My mother pointed at the number. See? See what? How much we invested in you. I looked at her. You paid part of my tuition. We paid all of it. No. You don't remember? I remember scholarships. She frowned. The scholarship covered some. I turned another page. There it was. A line beneath my name. Emily, total family investment, $46,820. I stared at the number. My mother folded her arms. That's what you've received. I looked up. And what has Lauren received? My mother didn't answer. I turned the page. Lauren's name was there. Her total was already at $91,460. I blinked. That's twice as much. Her circumstances were different. Of course. Don't do that. Do what? Make it sound unfair. I put my finger on the page. Her wedding. Different. Her first apartment. Different. Her children's school. Different. Her vacations? My mother went silent. I looked at the number beside the word travel. Then another. Furniture. Then another. Vehicle. The numbers kept growing. And suddenly I understood something. This wasn't a record of what we'd received. It was a record of what my mother believed we owed her. I turned back to the beginning. Where's the repayment column? My mother looked at me. For the first time, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. There isn't one. I stared at her. Then why are there percentages? She didn't respond. I flipped the page. 5%. 7%. 10%. Some amounts had been marked with small handwritten symbols. I recognized them. They were the same symbols I'd seen in the family education fund. Mom. What? Why is Mia's name here? Her face went blank. I turned the notebook around. My daughter's name was written on a page near the back. Mia Carter, family investment. Underneath. School supplies. Birthday gifts. Dental expenses. Clothing. Summer camp. Even the money my mother had given Mia for her 7th birthday. $100. Beside it was a small mark. I looked at my mother. What's this? Nothing. What does it mean? It's bookkeeping. No. I pointed at the mark. What does it mean? My mother finally sat down. Her voice became quieter. It means she's receiving more than her share. I felt my stomach drop. My daughter is 7. She has received a lot from this family. She is 7. That's irrelevant. No, Mom. That's the entire point. My mother leaned forward. You're emotional because you don't understand how families work. I looked at her. Then explain it. She sighed. Families contribute. Children receive. When they grow up, they contribute back. So Lauren contributes? Yes. I stared at her. Does she? My mother didn't answer. Does Lauren contribute to the family? She has children. So do I. She needs more help. I shook my head. You keep saying that. Because it's true. I closed the notebook. My mother immediately reached for it. Don't. I held it away. No, Emily. No. She stood. Give me the notebook. Why? Because it's private. I stared at her. You brought it out. I brought it out because I thought you were mature enough to understand it. I laughed. Mature enough? Yes. Mom, you secretly moved money from my bank account. That isn't what happened. You allowed my sister to use my daughter's education fund. Family fund. You forged my signature. Her face changed. There. The word she'd been trying to avoid. I watched her carefully. She didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered, "You're making this uglier than it is." I stood. Who signed it? She looked away. Mom, your father handled some paperwork. I froze. Dad? He didn't forge anything. Then who did? She said nothing. I waited. Finally, she whispered, Lauren. I stared at her. My own sister. The person who had hugged me at Christmas. The person who had cried on my shoulder about how difficult motherhood was. The person who had told me she was proud of me. She had signed my name. And my mother had let her. I placed the notebook on the table. Why? My mother looked at me. Because Lauren needed the money. That's not a reason. It is to a mother. No. My voice cracked. A reason explains something. It doesn't excuse it. My mother stared at me. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. Your father wanted to tell you. I stopped. What? He wanted to tell you months ago. About the account? About everything. Why didn't he? She looked toward the hallway. Because I told him you'd leave. I stared at her. Leave what? She looked directly at me. The family. I almost smiled. You were afraid I'd leave? Yes. Then why keep treating me like an employee? Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't move. She wiped them away angrily. You don't understand. Then explain it. My mother did this to me. I went quiet. The words sounded familiar. Aunt Rachel had mentioned the jar. The money. The childhood debt. My mother stared at the blue notebook. My mother kept accounts too. I waited. She wrote everything down. Clothes. School. Food. Medical expenses. Everything. So you hated it? No. She shook her head. I learned from it. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. You learned from it? Yes. You became exactly what hurt you. Her eyes hardened. That's not fair. It is. No, Emily. I made sure nobody in this family would ever be helpless. You made sure everyone was indebted. Same thing. I stared at her. No. She shook her head. You'll understand when you're older. I am older. Not old enough. I'm 36. And you still think love means giving without expecting anything back. I looked at her. Isn't that what love is? She laughed bitterly. That's what people say when they're the ones receiving. I didn't answer. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then my mother reached for the notebook. This time, I let her take it. She closed it. You want to know why Lauren got more? Yes. Because she stayed. I frowned. What? She stayed close. I stared at her. You mean she stayed dependent? She stayed involved. I moved 15 minutes away. Exactly. I suddenly understood. My mother wasn't measuring love. She was measuring access. Lauren was close. Lauren called every day. Lauren attended every family dinner. Lauren asked for help. And because she asked, my mother believed she deserved more. I had worked. I had built my own home. I had learned to solve my problems without calling my parents. And somehow, that had made me less worthy in my mother's eyes. I picked up my purse. I'm leaving. My mother didn't stop me. At the door, she said, Emily. I turned. She was holding the notebook against her chest. You're going to destroy this family. I looked at her. No. I opened the door. I'm just refusing to keep financing it. I walked outside. My father was sitting in his truck. He had apparently returned while we were talking. He lowered the window. Emily. I stopped. Dad. He looked at the notebook in my mother's hands. Then at me. His face told me he already knew what happened. He opened the passenger door. Get in. I hesitated. Then I did. We drove 3 blocks before he spoke. Your mother didn't tell you everything. I looked at him. There's more. Yes. What? He gripped the steering wheel. Your education fund wasn't originally for Mia. I stared at him. What? It started before Mia was born. Why? He didn't answer. Dad. He pulled into an empty parking lot. Then he turned off the engine. Your grandmother left money. I remembered Aunt Rachel's warning. The money for Mom? He nodded. How much? About $48,000. I stared at him. Where is it? My father looked down. Gone. Gone where? Your mother used it. For what? He looked at me. For Lauren. I couldn't breathe for a second. Everything. Not all at once. How much? Most of it. I stared through the windshield. The pieces were starting to connect. The family fund. My money. Lauren's school. The notebook. The childhood story. But there was still something I couldn't understand. Why did Mom create Mia's fund? My father hesitated. Then he said, because she knew you would eventually find out about the inheritance. I turned toward him. What does that mean? He looked at me. The money your grandmother left wasn't just for your mother. My heartbeat accelerated. What was it for? He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out an envelope, and placed it in my lap. My name was written across the front. Not my mother's handwriting. Not my father's. My grandmother's. I hadn't seen that handwriting in 12 years. My fingers started shaking. Where did you get this? Your mother kept it. Why? I found it last month. I looked at him. You've had this for a month? He nodded. And you didn't tell me? I was afraid. Of Mom. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. I read the first line, then the second. And by the third line, my entire understanding of my family changed. My grandmother had written, Emily, if you're reading this, your mother has probably told you that everything she gave you came from her own pocket. It didn't. I stopped breathing. My father looked away. I continued reading. And then I saw the number. $62,000. My grandmother hadn't left the money to my mother. She had left it to me. Not Lauren. Not my mother. Me. And the money had disappeared years before I even knew it existed. I looked at my father. Dad. He didn't move. Where's the rest? His eyes filled. Your mother spent it. On what? He whispered. Lauren's wedding. I stared at him. The same wedding my mother had once told me was proof that our family always supported each other. The same wedding where I'd given Lauren my entire savings because I thought sisters did that. The same wedding where my mother had told me I should be grateful I could contribute. My grandmother's money. My money. My daughter's money. All of it had been flowing in the same direction. Toward Lauren. I folded the letter carefully. Then my father said, There is one more thing. I looked at him. He reached into the glove compartment again. This time he pulled out a second document. A legal document. Old. Yellowed at the edges. And my name was on it. What is that? My father swallowed. Your grandmother didn't just leave you money. I stared at the paper. She left you something else. What? He looked at me. Her house. I couldn't speak. My grandmother's house had supposedly been sold after she died. That's what my mother had always told me. Sold. Too expensive to maintain. Money divided between the family. But my father was shaking his head. It was never sold. My eyes widened. Then where is it? My father looked toward the road. Your mother has been renting it out for 11 years. I felt the air leave my lungs. To whom? He finally looked at me. Lauren. And suddenly the $31,640 wasn't the biggest secret anymore. I looked at the legal document again. My name was printed clearly. The house had belonged to me. My sister had been living in it. My mother had been collecting rent. And nobody had told me. My father whispered, Emily, before you do anything, there's something you need to understand. I looked at him. What? He pointed at the second page. Your grandmother left a condition. I turned the page. There was one sentence. And after reading it, I realized the family fight I'd thought I was having was actually much bigger. I read the sentence again. Then again. I wasn't sure I'd understood it correctly. My grandmother had written, "The house may remain with Emily only if she chooses to live independently and refuses to participate in any arrangement that makes one child responsible for another." I looked at my father. "What does that mean?" He rubbed his forehead. "Your grandmother knew your mother. That doesn't answer my question. She knew what your mother was becoming." I looked down at the document. "So Grandma left me the house because she knew Mom would use it?" "Not exactly." "Then what exactly?" My father took a breath. "Your grandmother wanted you to have one thing that couldn't be turned into a family debt." I stared at him. The words were almost unbearable. One thing. One thing in my entire life that wasn't supposed to become a transaction. And my mother had found a way anyway. "Why didn't you tell me?" His eyes dropped. "I should have." Yes. I was scared. Of Mom. Yes. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because suddenly my father had become the second person in the family to admit the truth. Fear had been running this family for decades. My mother was afraid of becoming like her own mother. My father was afraid of my mother. Lauren was afraid of losing financial support. And I had been afraid of losing everyone. The only person who hadn't been afraid was my daughter. Mia had simply asked for pancakes. I folded the document. "I'm going to that house." My father looked at me. "Now." "Yes. Emily, Lauren lives there." "I know. Your mother will be furious." I looked at him. "Dad, she has already been furious for 3 weeks." He didn't argue. I drove to my grandmother's house alone. It was 20 minutes outside town. I hadn't been there since I was 19. I remembered the blue shutters. The oak tree near the driveway. The little stone path my grandmother used to sweep every Saturday morning. When I turned onto the street, my heart started beating faster. The house looked exactly the same. Except for one thing. There was a pink bicycle leaning against the porch. Lauren's daughter's. I parked across the street. For a moment, I simply sat there. This was supposed to be my house. Not because I believed I deserved it more than Lauren. Not because I wanted to take anything from my sister. But because my grandmother had chosen me. And my mother had hidden that choice for 11 years. I got out. Before I reached the porch, the front door opened. Lauren stepped outside. She froze. I froze. Her eyes went directly to the document in my hand. "Emily? Hi. What are you doing here?" I held up the paper. "I need to talk to you." She looked nervous. "About what?" "This house." Her expression changed immediately. "What about it? Who owns it?" She stared at me, then laughed. It was a nervous laugh. "Mom owns it." "No." Her smile disappeared. "Emily. Grandma left it to me." Lauren stopped breathing for a second. I watched her face. And I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not guilt. Fear. "You're lying. I have the legal documents." Mom said Grandma left it to the family. Mom was wrong. No, she wasn't. I looked at her. "Then explain why my name is on the deed." Lauren opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I stepped onto the porch. She moved backward. "Emily, you can't just come here and—" "I didn't come here to throw you out." That surprised her. "What?" "I came for the truth." She stared at me. "What's the truth?" I held the paper between us. "You've been living here for 11 years. "Yes." "Who pays the mortgage?" "There isn't one." "Who pays property taxes?" "Mom." "And who pays for repairs?" "Mom." "Do you pay rent?" Her eyes moved away. I already knew. "Lauren." She sighed. "Sometimes." "How much?" "Emily, why does it matter?" "Because this house belongs to me." Her face tightened. "You didn't even know it existed." "Because Mom hid it." "She didn't hide it. She never told me." "Maybe she didn't think you needed it." I stared at my sister. There it was again. The same family language. Need. Not rights. Not fairness. Not truth. Need. Lauren needed the house. So I didn't need to know about it. Lauren needed the education fund. So Mia didn't need it. Lauren needed help with her children. So I needed to understand. I stepped closer. "Did you know Grandma left it to me?" Lauren didn't answer. Did you? Her eyes filled with tears. And I knew. You knew, she whispered. Mom told me not to say anything. I felt something inside me crack. Not anger. Something worse. The final little piece of hope that my sister had been completely unaware. Did you know about the education fund? She looked at the porch floor. Yes. How much did you take? I didn't take anything. Lauren. I didn't. $31,640. Her face changed. I borrowed it. Without telling me. Mom said you agreed. I never agreed. She said you knew. I didn't. Lauren wiped her face. Emily, I was drowning. You were paying private school tuition. Do you know what private school costs? No. Then don't judge me. I stared at her. My daughter had a fund for her education. Lauren shook her head. It wasn't just Mia's. Yes, it was. No. She stepped closer. Mom always said it was for the grandchildren. I felt my stomach tighten. Then why was my money going into it? Lauren didn't answer. I waited. Finally, she whispered. Because Mom said you were responsible. I laughed. Responsible for what? Family. I looked at the house. At the pink bicycle. At the curtains in the windows. At the place my grandmother had once promised me I could have when I grew up. Then I looked back at Lauren. Do you know how much I've paid for this family? She shook her head. Neither did I. I pulled out my phone. Opened the bank records. Daycare payments. Scroll. Dad's medication. Scroll. Your SUV. Scroll. Your children's school. Scroll. Family vacations. Scroll. Wedding expenses. I looked at her. And now this house. Lauren stared at the phone. Her face had gone pale. Emily, I didn't know. You knew enough. She started crying. I didn't know Mom was doing all this. Did you know she used my bank account? No. Did you know she forged my signature? No. Did you know Grandma left me this house? She hesitated. Then whispered. Yes. I closed my eyes. That answer hurt more than everything else. How long? Since Grandma died. 11 years. I was scared. Of what? That Mom would stop helping me. I looked at her. And suddenly I saw the machine. My mother had built a system where everyone feared losing their benefits. Lauren feared losing the house. Dad feared losing peace. I feared losing the family. And my mother had become the person standing in the middle, distributing permission. I put my phone away. I'm not taking your house today. Lauren looked surprised. Why? Because I need to decide what I'm going to do. Emily, please. I raised my hand. She stopped. I am not asking you to leave tonight. Her shoulders dropped. But I am asking you to stop pretending this isn't mine. She nodded. Okay. And I need every document you have from Mom. What documents? Anything about this house. Rent. Taxes. Repairs. The education fund. Anything. She stared at me. Why? Because I'm done trying to understand my family through conversations. I held up the folder. From now on, I'm reading the paperwork. Lauren looked toward the street. Then she whispered. There's something you don't know. I waited. About the house? She nodded. What? Mom isn't the one collecting the rent. I frowned. What? Lauren swallowed. There's a property management company. Which one? She looked at me. Fairview Holdings. I knew the name. Everyone in town knew it. It owned dozens of rental properties. But there was something strange. My mother had always told me she hated landlords. She'd complained about rental companies. She'd called them greedy. I stared at Lauren. Who owns Fairview Holdings? Lauren shook her head. I don't know. Who collects your rent? Usually an online portal. Who sends the notices? Fairview. Do you have a lease? Yes. Show me. She hesitated. Then went inside. A minute later, she returned with a folder. I opened it. The lease was 12 pages. Tenant. Lauren Carter. Property owner. Fairview Holdings, LLC. I turned the page. Then another. And another. At the bottom was the signature of the property manager. I recognized it. My mother's handwriting. I stared at Lauren. Your rent goes to my mother. Lauren shook her head. No, it goes to Fairview. Look. I pointed. She leaned closer. Her face changed. What? I pointed at the management agreement. My mother was listed as the authorized manager. But that still wasn't the strangest part. I turned to the ownership page. And there it was. Member, Emily Carter. My name. I couldn't breathe. Lauren whispered. What does that mean? I stared at the document. I don't know. Then I remembered the bank manager. The forged signature. The old authorization. The education fund. My grandmother's letter. Everything was connected. I called Rachel. She answered immediately. Emily? I'm looking at a company called Fairview Holdings. Silence. Then, where did you get that name? Why? Because Fairview Holdings is listed in the family trust records. My heart started pounding. What family trust? Rachel went quiet. Emily, tell me. The trust your grandmother created. I stared at the document. What's in the trust? Several properties. How many? I don't know exactly. Rachel. She sighed. 4. I closed my eyes. 4 properties? Yes. And I'm the beneficiary? Another pause. Yes. I looked at Lauren. She was watching me. I asked, who controls the trust? Rachel answered, your mother. I couldn't speak. My mother didn't just hide one house. She had been controlling 4 properties that were legally meant for me. For 11 years. I looked at the document in my hand. Then I saw the date. The trust had been amended 6 months after my grandmother died. 6 months. The exact time my mother had supposedly told me there was no inheritance. I whispered, who amended it? Rachel's voice became very quiet. Emily, you need an attorney. Who amended it? She didn't answer. I looked at the signature line. There were 2 names. My mother's. And mine. I stared. My signature was underneath hers. Again. But this time, there was something different. A tiny detail. A detail my mother couldn't possibly have known. The signature had been made using my old middle initial. I stopped breathing. I'd stopped using that middle initial when I was 23. My mother knew that. But whoever forged the document had copied an older signature, which meant this wasn't recent. It had happened years ago. Maybe before Mia was even born. I looked at Lauren. Where's Mom right now? She swallowed. At home, I think. I closed the folder. I'm going there. Lauren grabbed my arm. Emily, wait. I looked at her hand. She let go. Mom knows you're coming. How? Because I called her. I stared at her. You called Mom. Lauren nodded. What did she say? Lauren's eyes filled with tears. She said you were never supposed to find the trust. My blood went cold. Why? Lauren whispered. Because Grandma left the properties to you. I already knew that. But Lauren wasn't finished. She also left you control of the trust. I stared at her. Not Mom. No. Then why has Mom been controlling it? Lauren shook her head. I don't know. I looked at the house again. My grandmother's house. My house. A house my sister had lived in for 11 years. A property my mother had apparently managed for me. And then I remembered the line from Grandma's letter. If your mother tells you the money was used for the family, ask her what she considers family. I suddenly understood why my grandmother had written that sentence. She knew exactly what would happen. I drove home. I didn't call my mother. I didn't text her. I didn't warn her. Instead, I called a lawyer. Her name was Michelle Grant. She specialized in trusts and family property disputes. I showed her the documents. She read them silently. After 15 minutes, she removed her glasses. Emily. Yes. You need to understand something. What? This is much bigger than a family education fund. I nodded. How big? She tapped the trust agreement. If this document is authentic, your mother may have been exercising control she didn't legally have. And the signatures? Those are a separate issue. Could they be forged? Yes. My stomach tightened. Michelle continued. But before we accuse anyone, we need the original records. From where? The county recorder. She looked at me. And the bank. I thought of Rachel. Michelle picked up another document. There's something else. What? She pointed to a paragraph. Your grandmother placed a condition on the trust. I already knew about the condition. but I hadn't understood what it meant. Michelle read it. Then she looked at me. If any beneficiary uses trust assets to support another beneficiary without written authorization, the trustee's authority can be challenged. I stared at her. Meaning if your mother used your trust assets to fund Lauren's expenses, she may have violated the trust terms. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. And if she forged my signature? Michelle's expression became serious. Then we're no longer talking about a family disagreement. She closed the folder. We're talking about potential financial misconduct. I sat back. The word sounded enormous. Too official. Too final. Can I fix this without destroying my family? Michelle looked at me. I can't answer that. Why? Because you aren't the person who destroyed the trust. She paused. You're the person who discovered it. That night, I went home and found Mia sitting at the kitchen table drawing. She looked up. Mom? Yeah, Grandma called. I stopped. What did she say? Mia shrugged. She said she misses me. I put my purse down. Anything else? Mia thought. She asked if we're still coming Sunday. I stared at her. Sunday. The family dinner. My mother had invited everyone. Lauren. Dad. The children. Everyone. I suddenly knew why. She wasn't planning a family dinner. She was planning a negotiation. Maybe even a cleanup. I looked at Mia. Are you excited? She nodded. Can I wear my blue dress? Of course. She smiled. Then she went back to drawing. I stood there watching her. And I made a decision. I would go. But this time, I wouldn't arrive as the daughter who needed permission. I wouldn't arrive as the sister who owed understanding. And I wouldn't arrive as the mother who could be manipulated through her child. I would arrive with the documents. The bank records. The trust agreement. The forged signatures. And one question. Why had my mother spent 11 years making me believe I owned nothing when I actually owned the one thing she couldn't afford to lose? Sunday dinner was 2 days away. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what my mother might say. I was curious. Because I finally understood something. She wasn't trying to protect the family from me. She was trying to protect the family from the truth. Sunday came faster than I wanted. At 4:17 that afternoon, my mother texted me. Dinner at 6. Please don't make this difficult. Your father has had enough stress. I stared at the message. There it was. Not how are you? Not are you okay? Not even can we talk? Just a reminder that my father's feelings were apparently another responsibility I was expected to carry. I put my phone down. Then I opened the folder Michelle had given me. Everything was there. The original trust documents. The property records. The bank statements. The management agreement for Fairview Holdings. And copies of the documents carrying my name. Some were legitimate. Some weren't. But there was one document that kept pulling my attention back. The trust amendment. The one supposedly signed by me 11 years ago. I studied my signature. At first glance, it looked perfect. Even the little upward curve at the end was there. But Michelle had circled something in red. The date. I hadn't noticed it before. The amendment was dated October 14th. That date meant nothing to me. Until I checked my old employment records. October 14th. I had been in Chicago. Not Ohio. I had been attending a 3-day nursing conference. And I had proof. My hotel receipt. My flight confirmation. My conference registration. Photos from the event. I was nearly 600 miles away when the document claimed I'd signed it in my mother's office. I sat back in my chair. My hands were cold. Michelle had warned me not to confront my mother until we'd collected everything. But suddenly I understood why. If I walked into that dinner angry, my mother would turn it into an argument. If I walked in emotional, she'd call me unstable. If I cried, she'd call me overwhelmed. If I shouted, she'd call me ungrateful. So I did the one thing she'd never expected. I stayed calm. At 5:32, I drove to my parents' house. Mia sat beside me in the back seat. She was wearing the blue dress she'd picked that morning. Mom? Yeah. Are you and Grandma still fighting? I looked at her in the rearview mirror. No. Then why does everyone keep saying you're fighting? I almost smiled. Because sometimes people call it a fight when you stop agreeing with them. She thought about that. That's weird. Very. She looked out the window. Then she said, "Can I still have pancakes after dinner?" I smiled. Absolutely. That was the only promise I cared about keeping. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, there were already 6 cars. My sister's SUV was there. My Aunt Lorraine's sedan. 2 cars I didn't recognize. And my mother's new black Lexus. I parked. Before I could get out, my phone buzzed. "Michelle, do not sign anything tonight." I typed back, "I won't." Then I put the phone away. Mia opened her door. I reached for her hand. "Ready?" She nodded. We walked inside. The house smelled exactly like it always did on Sundays. Roast chicken, rosemary, fresh bread. The kind of smell that used to make me feel safe. Tonight it felt like a stage set. My mother appeared from the dining room. She was wearing a cream sweater and pearl earrings. Her face softened when she saw Mia. "There's my girl." Mia ran to her. My mother hugged her. Then she looked at me. "Emily." "Mom." She smiled. "I'm glad you came." I said I would. Her smile tightened. "Yes, you always do." That sentence would have hurt me once. Tonight, I noticed what it was. A reminder. A hook. You always do what you're supposed to do. I walked into the dining room. My father was already sitting at the table. He looked tired. Lauren sat beside him. Her husband, Mark, was there too. My Aunt Lorraine sat near the window. And at the far end of the table were 2 people I'd never seen before. A man in a gray suit. And a woman with a leather folder. My mother noticed me looking. "Emily, these are friends of the family." I smiled politely. "That's interesting." Her eyes narrowed. "What?" "Nothing." I sat down. Mia took the chair beside me. The man in the gray suit introduced himself. "David Keller." The woman was named Patricia. My mother didn't explain why they were there. I didn't ask. Dinner began. For 20 minutes, nobody mentioned the trust. Nobody mentioned Fairview. Nobody mentioned the house. Instead, my mother talked about Mia's school. "How's she doing?" "Good." "Still struggling with math?" "No." My mother glanced at Mia. "Grandma could help you with that." Mia looked at me. I smiled. "Mom's got it." My mother looked back at me. There was the first crack. Small, but visible. The food arrived. Everyone ate. I barely tasted mine. Then my mother put down her fork. "Emily." I looked up. "Can we talk?" I nodded. She glanced at Mia. "Maybe somewhere private." "No." The word came out naturally. My mother blinked. "No, we can talk here." She looked around the table. "This is a family matter." "Then family can hear it." My father shifted in his chair. Lauren looked down. My mother smiled. "Fine." She folded her hands. "I think this has gone far enough." I waited. "You've been under a lot of stress." I almost laughed. There it was. Exactly as predicted. "You're working too much. You're raising Mia alone. You've been dealing with financial pressure. And now you've convinced yourself that your family has somehow betrayed you." I said nothing. My mother continued. "We all make mistakes." I looked at David and Patricia. Neither looked at me. Then my mother said, "Your grandmother's estate was complicated." I finally spoke. "No." She stopped. "No what?" "That's not how this works." Her face hardened slightly. "You don't know how complicated it was. I know Grandma left me the house." Silence. My father stopped eating. Lauren's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My mother stared at me. Then she smiled. "Emily, we've already discussed this." "No, Mom. We haven't. Your grandmother's wishes were not that simple. I have the original trust." Her smile disappeared. The man in the gray suit shifted. My mother looked at him. Then at me. "Where did you get that?" "From the county records." Her face changed. Just for a second. But I saw it. Fear. Not anger. Fear. I placed the folder on the table. My mother stared at it. I opened it. Grandma left the Alder Street property to me. My sister looked at my mother. Then at me. I continued. She also established a trust containing 3 additional properties. My mother said nothing. And she named me as the beneficiary. Patricia suddenly spoke. "Emily, I think there's been a misunderstanding." I looked at her. Who are you? She hesitated. My mother answered. Patricia is an estate specialist. I smiled. Great. I turned toward Patricia. Then you can explain something. She looked uncomfortable. What? Why does my mother appear as trustee on documents where the trust names me as successor trustee? Patricia looked at my mother. My mother said, because Emily was young. I stared at her. I was 23. You were inexperienced. So you took control. I protected the assets. For 11 years? Yes. I opened another document. Then why did you transfer rental income from those properties into a personal account? My mother's face went blank. I looked at David. And why did Fairview Holdings collect rent from a property owned by my trust? Nobody answered. I turned to Lauren. She was staring at the table. I asked quietly, did you know? She shook her head. My mother immediately said, Lauren has nothing to do with this. I looked at her. That's interesting. What? Because she lives in one of the properties. My mother slammed her hand on the table. Enough. Mia jumped. I immediately reached for her hand. It's okay. My mother looked at me. You're embarrassing yourself. I took a breath. No, Mom. I opened the next document. I'm finally embarrassing the paperwork. My Aunt Lorraine lowered her eyes to hide a smile. My father stared at his plate. My mother stood. You have no idea what you're accusing me of. I haven't accused you of anything. I slid the trust amendment across the table. I've asked questions. She looked down. Her face changed. The room became completely silent. I tapped the signature. This says I signed this amendment on October 14th. Yes. I was in Chicago. You could have signed it beforehand. No. My mother looked at me. Why not? Because the document was notarized on October 14th. Her face went still. I continued. The notary's record says I appeared in person. Nobody moved. I pulled out my hotel receipt. Here's where I was. Then my flight record. Here's how I got there. Then my conference registration. And here's the attendance record. My mother stared at the papers. My father's face had gone pale. Patricia finally leaned forward. Emily, may I see those? I handed them to her. She read them. Then read the amendment. Then looked at my mother. Carol. My mother snapped. Don't. Patricia closed the folder. My mother's eyes moved to David. Say something. David looked at me. Then at my mother. Carol, this is serious. I looked at my mother. And for the first time in my entire life, she looked small. Not weak. Not helpless. Just trapped. I asked, who forged my signature? She didn't answer. Mom. Nothing. Who? Her eyes filled with tears. And suddenly I knew. She wasn't going to answer. Not because she couldn't. Because she believed she could still control what happened next. She sat down. Then she looked directly at me. You want the truth? Yes. Fine. She took a breath. Your grandmother was going to leave everything to you. I know. You were 23. I know. You had a baby coming. I frowned. Mia wasn't born yet. I know. Then what does that have to do with anything? My mother's voice softened. You were going to leave. I stared at her. What? You had accepted a job in another state. I remembered. I had. 23 years old. Fresh out of nursing school. I had been offered a position in Colorado. My grandmother had been thrilled. My mother had been furious. But I'd forgotten the details. My mother hadn't. You were going to take Mia and disappear. Mia wasn't even born. You were going to build a life without us. I stared at her. So you changed the trust? I protected the family. No. My voice was quieter now. You controlled it. My mother shook her head. I kept everyone together. You took my inheritance. I used it for the family. You used it without permission. I had to. Why? My mother looked around the table. At my father. At Lauren. At the children. Then she looked at me. Because somebody had to choose who got what. I felt a strange calm settle over me. There it was. The truth. Not an accident. Not confusion. Not paperwork. A choice. My mother had decided that she was the person who got to distribute what belonged to everyone else. I asked, how much? She frowned. What? How much of my trust money did you use? She looked away. I repeated. How much? David answered quietly. Approximately $280,000. The room went silent. Lauren covered her mouth. My father closed his eyes. I stared at David. 280,000? That's the current estimated amount. I looked at my mother. What did you spend it on? She looked angry now. Your sister. Lauren started crying. Mom. My mother turned toward her. I put you through school. Mom, I didn't know it was her money. You needed help. I didn't know. My mother snapped. You would have taken it anyway. Lauren stared at her. And suddenly my sister looked at me. Really looked at me. I saw shame on her face. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. My mother continued. Your sister had children. So did I. You had a stable job. So did she. You always had more. I stared at my mother. More what? She couldn't answer. I leaned back. Then I said something I'd never said before. You didn't think I was stronger. My mother looked at me. You thought I was cheaper. Nobody spoke. I continued. You thought I'd survive whatever you took. My mother's eyes filled. And you were right. I paused. I survived. Her face changed. But surviving you isn't the same as forgiving you. My father finally spoke. Emily. I looked at him. He looked devastated. I didn't know it was that much. I nodded. Dad, you didn't know because nobody told you. He swallowed. I'm sorry. I believed him. That was the worst part. I believed him. And I realized forgiveness wasn't the same as pretending nothing happened. I turned toward Patricia. What happens now? She looked at me carefully. That depends on what you want. My mother immediately interrupted. Nothing happens. Patricia didn't look at her. That's not your decision anymore. My mother's face went white. I looked at Patricia. If I want control of the trust restored, you'll need to petition the court. If I want the properties transferred, possible. If I want the money returned, that's more complicated. My mother stood again. Emily, don't. I looked at her. She was crying now. Real tears. Not the kind she used when she wanted someone to feel guilty. These were different. They frightened me. She walked toward me. Please. One word. I had spent my entire childhood waiting to hear that word from her. But not like this. Not as a daughter. As the person who had finally become capable of saying no. I looked at her. I didn't want your money. She cried harder. I wanted my name. Her mouth trembled. I wanted my daughter. I shook my head. You wanted control. She whispered. Because I was scared. So was I. She stared at me. And I didn't steal from you. The room went silent. Then my mother did something I had never seen her do. She sat down. And she covered her face with both hands. My father reached toward her. I stopped him. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Because I knew what would happen next. He would comfort her. Everyone would comfort her. And somehow, by the end of the night, I would become the cruel daughter who had made her mother cry. Not this time. I picked up the folder. Then I looked at Lauren. You don't have to leave the house tonight. She looked at me. But you do need to start paying rent to the actual owner. Her eyes widened. Emily. I'll give you 30 days. My mother looked up. You can't do that. I turned toward her. Actually, Mom. I held up the trust document. I can. Then I looked at Lauren. If you want to stay, we'll sign a real lease. Market rate. No favors. No hidden accounts. Lauren started crying. Okay. And the education fund? She nodded. I'll pay back what I can. No. She looked confused. Not to me. I glanced at the trust. To Mia. Lauren looked down. I understand. For the first time, nobody argued. No one called me selfish. No one said family comes first. No one asked me to sacrifice something else. They simply sat there with the truth. I gathered my papers. Mia stood beside me. As we reached the front door, my father called my name. I turned. He looked at me. Are you really going to take the house? I looked at him. Yes. He nodded slowly. Then he asked, Can I still visit? That question broke something inside me. I looked at him for a long moment. Dad, you never needed permission. His eyes filled. I opened the door. Then my mother said something behind me. Emily. I stopped. I didn't turn around. She whispered. Your grandmother would be proud of you. My hand tightened around the door handle. I finally looked back. No, Mom. She stared at me. Grandma would be sad that it took me 11 years to understand what she was trying to protect me from. My mother lowered her eyes. I walked outside. Mia followed. We got into the car. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Mia looked at me. Mom? Yeah. Are we getting Grandma's house? I smiled. Eventually. Can I paint my room? I laughed. Yes. What color? Whatever you want. She thought for a second. Yellow. Yellow. Like sunshine. I started the car. And for the first time in weeks, my chest felt lighter. But I wasn't finished. Because the next morning, Michelle called. Her voice was different. Not worried. Not cautious. Serious. Emily, I received something from the county recorder. What? A document filed 11 years ago. What kind? A transfer. My stomach tightened. Of what? She paused. Your grandmother's fourth property. I gripped the steering wheel. Where did it go? That's the problem. Michelle. It wasn't transferred to your mother. My heart stopped. Then who? She took a breath. Emily, the property was transferred into a company. Which company? I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear it. Michelle said, Fairview Holdings. I closed my eyes. Then she added, there's one more thing. What? The transfer was signed by you. My eyes opened. That isn't possible. I know. I'm serious. I never signed anything. I believe you. Then why is my signature there? Michelle's voice dropped. Because whoever did this didn't just copy your signature. A pause. They had access to your original identification documents. I couldn't breathe. Which documents? Your driver's license copy. Your social security verification page. Your old passport record. My stomach turned. Who had those? Michelle answered. Your mother. I stared through the windshield. The house. The trust. The education fund. Fairview Holdings. My sister's rent. The forged documents. It wasn't one lie. It wasn't one bad decision. It was a system. And my mother had been building it since I was 23. Then Michelle said the sentence that changed everything. Emily, I don't think your mother was the person who originally created Fairview Holdings. I whispered. Then who was? Michelle didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said, your grandmother. I stared at the road. The woman who had left me the house. The woman who had written the letter. The woman who had warned me about my mother. She had created Fairview Holdings too. And suddenly I wondered whether my grandmother had been protecting me from my mother. Or preparing me for her. I thought the hardest part was over. It wasn't. The hardest part came 3 days after I moved into the blue house, when my mother showed up at my front door without calling. She wasn't carrying groceries. She wasn't carrying an apology. She was carrying a folder. I opened the door only halfway. Mom. Her eyes moved past me into the hallway. Then toward the living room. Then upstairs. She looked at the house like someone inspecting property that had somehow been transferred without their permission. You really bought it, she said. I kept my hand on the door. Yes. And you did it without us. I almost smiled. That was sort of the point. Her jaw tightened. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she held out the folder. Your father wants you to have these. I didn't take it. What are they? Documents. About what? She looked irritated that I was asking. Your childhood. That sentence made me still. Behind me, I heard Caleb running across the living room. Mom, where's my... He stopped when he saw my mother. His entire face changed. Not fear. Something worse. Uncertainty. My mother smiled at him. Hi, sweetheart. Caleb didn't answer. He looked at me instead. I crouched beside him. Go upstairs and find your blue backpack for me, okay? Okay. He disappeared up the stairs. My mother watched him go. Then she whispered, see what you've done? I looked at her. What have I done? You've turned him against us. No. My voice stayed calm. I stopped teaching him that love comes with a bill. Her expression hardened. Then she opened the folder herself. Inside were photocopies, old bank statements, receipts, a few handwritten pages. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A document dated 22 years earlier. My name was printed across the top. Sophie Sinclair, Education Fund. I stared at it. What is this? My mother didn't answer. I pulled the paper out. There had been an account opened when I was 12. Money deposited every month. Not a huge amount, but enough. Enough that by the time I graduated high school, there should have been thousands of dollars waiting for college. I looked at my mother. Where did this money go? Her eyes moved away. Your father handled that. I felt something inside me shift. Mom. She finally looked at me. We used it. For what? Family expenses. I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because suddenly the green ledger made even more sense. The money I had earned. The money they had saved in my name. The money I'd believed was mine. It had all been treated like household property. I turned another page. Then another. And then I found something I hadn't expected. A deposit receipt. $14,800. My father's handwriting was on the bottom. And underneath it were 3 words. For Sophie's house. I couldn't breathe for a second. My mother saw my face. Your father wanted to help you. Help me? Yes. With money that was already mine? She didn't respond. I looked at the receipt again. The date was 6 years ago. 6 years. Before I had saved my first dollar for the blue house. Before Caleb had started school. Before I'd picked up all those extra night shifts. My father had apparently intended to help me buy a home. So where had the money gone? I flipped through the papers. Then I saw another account number. And suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do. Mom. What? Where's Dad? She frowned. At home. I need to talk to him. You're not going there. I looked up. That sentence told me everything. Why? Because he doesn't want another argument. This isn't an argument. You always say that right before you make something bigger. I held the folder against my chest. No. I'm finally making it accurate. She stepped closer. Sophie, please. It was the first time she'd said please in months. Not sweetheart. Not family. Not your turn. Please. I waited. Her voice dropped. Your father is tired. So am I. He made mistakes. So did I. She stared at me. What mistakes did you make? I thought about the $400 every month. The SUV. The credit card. The dinners. The private school. The bread basket. My son sitting at a table while everyone else ate steak. I mistook being needed for being loved. My mother's face changed. Just slightly. But I saw it. Then Caleb came back downstairs. He was carrying his backpack. He stopped beside me. Mom, can we go to the park? I looked at him. Absolutely. My mother stepped backward. She looked at the folder. Then at me. Your father really did want to give you that money. I nodded. I believe you. Her eyes filled. But I need to know where it went. She swallowed. Then she said something that made the room feel smaller. Madison needed it. I closed my eyes. There it was. Again. My sister. Always the exception. Always the emergency. Always the reason. When I opened my eyes, my mother was crying. And for the first time, I didn't rush to comfort her. Not because I didn't care. Because I finally understood something. Sometimes comforting someone immediately is just another way of avoiding the truth. I took Caleb's hand. Come on. We walked toward the door. Behind us, my mother said quietly. She needed help. I stopped. Then I turned. So did I. My mother said nothing. And Mom. She looked at me. Caleb needed a mother who wasn't constantly exhausted from proving she deserved her place. That one landed. I could see it. I opened the door. My son stepped outside. And I followed. For the first time in my life, I didn't turn around to see whether my mother was still watching. Because I already knew. She was. And for the first time, it didn't matter. The next morning, I drove straight to my father's house. Not to argue. Not to ask for an apology. I wanted one answer. Where had the $14,800 gone? My father opened the door. He looked older than he had the week before. Your mother told me you found the papers. I did. He stepped aside. I walked into the kitchen where I'd spent half my childhood being told to be grateful. My father sat down. I placed the folder on the table. Tell me the truth. He stared at the papers. Then he sighed. The money was supposed to be yours. Supposed to be? It was an account your mother started when you were 12. Your grandmother added to it. I added to it. It was meant for college or a house. Then why didn't I know about it? My father rubbed his forehead. Because your mother said you weren't ready to know. I stared at him. 22 years old, Dad. I was 22. He didn't answer. And Madison? His eyes dropped. She was going through a difficult time. I almost laughed. Of course she was. She had the apartment. Then the wedding. Then the SUV. And you gave her my house money. We borrowed it. Did she pay it back? Silence. That was the answer. I opened the folder. How much? My father whispered, all of it. I sat back. For years I'd believed my family couldn't help me buy a home because money was tight. They weren't unable to help me. They had already helped someone else with money that had been set aside for me. And somehow I was still the one expected to sacrifice. My father looked at me. I was going to tell you. When? He looked toward the window. I don't know. I nodded. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. Did Mom know about the credit card? My father didn't move. Not even a little. That was enough. You knew. His voice cracked. I knew she used your information. I stared at him. And you let her? I thought she'd pay it off. She did pay it off. He looked confused. I tapped the folder. Every month. With my name. My father closed his eyes. I felt anger rise. But underneath it was something colder. Disappointment. You taught me how to check the oil in a car, I said. You taught me how to read a contract. You taught me never to sign something I didn't understand. He looked at me. And then you watched my mother spend my name. He couldn't answer. I stood. I don't need you to fight, Mom. His eyes lifted. I need you to stop pretending you didn't see it. That finally broke him. Tears filled his eyes. I was afraid. I said nothing. Your mother gets angry, Sophie. She always has. And I thought keeping quiet kept the family together. I looked at the man who had spent 40 years choosing silence. No, Dad. He looked at me. Silence didn't keep the family together. I picked up the folder. It kept Mom comfortable. I walked toward the door. Behind me, he said my name. I stopped. I'm sorry. 2 words. Simple. Late. But real. I turned around. I believe you. His face tightened. But forgiveness doesn't mean I give you access again. He nodded slowly. And that was the first boundary I ever gave my father without apologizing afterward. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. Because that afternoon, Madison called. I almost didn't answer. But something told me I should. Hello. She was quiet. Then she said, Mom didn't tell you everything. I sat down. What didn't she tell me? She told me you found the ledger. My stomach tightened. How do you know about the ledger? Silence. Then Madison whispered. Because I've seen it. I didn't speak. She kept records on all of us. Not like mine. No. Madison's voice changed. Not like yours. That was when I realized something. The ledger hadn't been my mother's weapon against only me. It had been the family rulebook. Madison continued. She started charging me too. I stared at the wall. What? After you stopped paying. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. How much? Mom says I owe her $27,600. I closed my eyes. $27,600. The family machine had finally turned toward the person who had benefited from it. And suddenly Madison wasn't calling to ask me for money. She was calling because she was scared. What do you want from me? I asked. Her voice became very small. I want to know how you got out. I looked toward the kitchen. Toward the refrigerator. Toward the little drawing Caleb had taped there that morning. A blue house. A crooked tree. 3 stick figures. One of them was me. I smiled. First, you stop asking me to rescue you. Madison didn't answer. Then you get your own credit report. Silence. Then you make your own plan. Will you help me? I thought about all the years I'd spent doing exactly that. Then I remembered Caleb holding that bread basket. No. She exhaled sharply. I continued. But I can tell you where the door is. And for the first time, Madison didn't argue. She simply said, okay. Then she hung up. I sat there for a long time. Not celebrating. Not angry. Just tired. Because revenge had never been what I wanted. I had wanted my name back. My money back. My peace back. And most importantly, I wanted my son to grow up believing that love didn't have to be earned at a family table. That evening, Caleb came downstairs carrying 2 pieces of paper. Mom? Yeah. Look. He spread them across the kitchen table. One was a drawing of our new house. The other was a list. At the top, written in crooked 7-year-old handwriting. Things we don't have to pay for. Underneath were 3 things. Being family. Being kind. Being loved. I stared at that list. Then I looked at my son. Who taught you that? He shrugged. You did. And that was when I realized the real ending wasn't my mother losing control. It wasn't Madison finally understanding. It wasn't even the house. It was this. The ledger had stopped with me. Whatever my family had inherited from the generation before. The fear. The guilt. The debts. The constant counting. Caleb wasn't getting any of it. I folded his little list carefully. Can we put it on the fridge? He nodded. I grabbed a magnet. And I placed it right beside the photograph of the blue house. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We need to talk. For the first time, I didn't feel my stomach tighten. I typed 1 sentence. You can call when you're ready to talk without asking me for anything. Then I put the phone down. No argument. No speech. No revenge. Just a boundary. And that was the strangest part. For 34 years, I thought peace meant everyone else finally understood me. I was wrong. Peace was realizing they didn't have to. I just had to understand myself. And I did. The family ledger was closed. My name was mine again. And my son? He got the east-facing bedroom. Not because he earned it. Not because I paid for it. Not because someone decided he was worth the investment. Because he was my child. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't making people regret what they did. It's making sure they never get the chance to do it to the next generation.